Hi guys, welcome to the Bright Scent podcast, where we talk about all sorts of things that pertain to faith, business, life. Really, our heart is just to help start the conversations and champion you to send the light that you have where it's needed most. So we've got our podcast started off doing candles. We also have merch and other cool stuff you can find in the show notes on our website. But today we just want to focus on the idea of obedience. So how are you feeling about this topic, Destiny? It's kind of like, can be a heavy one.
I am feeling really good about it because I feel like, no, not I feel, I'm going to be assertive. I know that God has been working on me with this topic in this season of my life right now. So I feel really good talking about it. I feel like I have a perspective that hopefully could encourage someone. And looking back, I hope it will encourage myself, because it's not just about everybody else, but like this is also for us.
Yeah.
Just to almost like document our growth and document, what we're going through. So no, I'm really excited. This is a good topic. It's a hard topic, but it's important, and it's important at every stage.
Yeah.
Not just, when you've got 1,000 testimonies that you could give on it, like,
Right.
It's a fruitful conversation as a young person, as a child, as a young adult, as a middle-aged person, adult, CEO, whatever. It's a really good conversation. So I'm excited.
Yeah. The Bible talks about, like, we hear verses like obedience is better than sacrifice. If you love me, keep my commandments. And I think these verses can make it sort of seem like a task, sort of something that like we have to do this thing to like prove our salvation. But when you really understand, I think for me, I really had to, I'm beginning to, I'll say that in the past few years, just starting to begin to realize that God's leadership is perfect. And if we believe that his leadership is perfect, then obedience shouldn't be difficult. And I didn't really realize this, but the same verse that says, until I like went back and actually like read it, but the same verse that says, for this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, for his commandments are not burdensome. And I think that goes along with leadership and understanding that when God asks you to do something, he says he won't give this more than we can bear and things like that. So for what has God been revealing to you in terms of what obedience looks like and, godly obedience to what he has asked you to do?
Yeah. Right now it is definitely related to obedience bringing dominion, or like obedience bringing authority over situations. Meaning that when I am submitted to God's leadership and I obey what he has for me, including like what's in the scripture, his explicit will that he stated, and then like the will specifically for my life, right? That is the revealed will of God for me and my family, the personal relationship that I have with the Lord, how he's revealing that stuff. And if I'm obedient to both of those things, that I'll be able to rule over the things of the world that are trying to come for me. And I think that is what he's teaching me right now, because I think oftentimes when we're out of, and this is not necessarily always true, but disobedience breeds chaos.
That's true.
It breeds chaos. Now, if you have chaos in your life and you are being obedient, you could just be going through a trial, right? So I don't want to say that every time something negative is happening, it's because you're out of order.
Right.
Because that is not true. But obedience breeds chaos. I mean, think about with kids, like if kids are not following the rules, it's a mess. I mean,
Right.
it's a mess in the classroom. It's a mess at home. I mean, we don't have children yet, but I can imagine when this baby shows up, if she's not, when she's at the point where she can do,
Destiny's pregnant, by the way.
Yes.
Just to give context.
I'm currently pregnant. So like when this baby shows up and she's getting older and she's just not, it's going to feel like I have a lack of control, right?
Right.
It's going to feel that way. Not that I'm out of control, but it's going to feel like I don't have control. And so I think it's the same principle with the Lord. Like when we are disobedient, it brings chaos to the earth, into our lives. So I think the Lord is revealing that to me, that if you want, not that I want control, but that I want authority over what's going on, I know I have to be submitted to God and obey what he's commanded me to do. And if I don't do those things, I won't have authority over the principalities that are trying to come into my life, or that just exist in the world. Like, not even that they're trying to specifically come for me, but they just exist on the planet, because we can talk about scripture here. Romans 5:19 says, because one person disobeyed God, many became sinners. Wow. But because one other person, so the first person talking about Adam, right? But because one other person obeyed God, talk about Jesus, man will be made righteous. So I think if you recognize that, like, the earth is operating in chaos simply because of disobedience.
Yeah.
Simply. Like that's really all it was. We disobeyed. And so now the earth is spiraling out of control. But Jesus restored that authority, right? When he went to the cross. And we have the ability to have authority over the principalities of the earth if we come under that same thing and obey.
Yeah.
So I think that's what God's showing me right now.
Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. As you were talking, I was at an event last week, and we kind of had a time of like prophetic activation, I guess you could say. And I'm like growing in that area. That's been an area that I've been like touchy of, like not really feeling like I have that gift of like prophetic vision and all that stuff like that. But anywho, that doesn't matter. The Lord's growing me in that, and I'm trying to be obedient when he asks me to step out. So
right.
There you go. But I had this vision, and I like how you mentioned like the way the world is just so chaotic. And I think our obedience is going to be the path forward, not our skills or all this stuff, or our ability to have debates and all that, and whatever, but
right.
Our ability to be obedient to what the Lord is asking us to do in this season. And it might look different than last. And so I mentioned that I had this kind of, I guess, open vision is what the spiritual term for it is. But it was this idea of like, there was a cave, and in the cave, there's like someone walking through with a torch, and it's like lit, and you can't see the person because the cave is completely dark, but you can just see this light that's like going down the cave. And I just assumed a man was holding it. Later, I kind of had the idea that it was Jesus. And so, like in, I don't know, like movies when they're walking through caves and there's like the torches that are like on the walls, and they light the torches to like light the wall. And so he's going from the left to the right, lighting the torches. Some are easy to light up, and some are like not there. Like they're not in their position. Like there's the holder, there's like the holder for for the light or torch, but there's no torch there. And so it's like, he can't clearly see, there's the path is not clear forward, a clear path forward, because some things are out of order, and there's some torches and some lanterns that aren't in position to be lit. And I don't know. So I was thinking about that, and then I just was reminded of like if you don't know, there's this revival happening in Asbury that has like sparked like a revival all over the well, all over the country, really, in different Christian colleges and churches and things like that.
Okay.
And it's just been this like 24/7 worship that's been happening at this college, that like people were like traveling all over to come and like witness. Now it's just closed off to students, I think. But it's also sparked things in other universities. Anywho, I was just reminded, like, the people who, before that revival started, somebody had to be in position to like be ready for when the fire of God was going to fall on that college and start that whole movement that, you know, it's like viral on TikTok and the news and articles and everything. But like people had to be in position for that fire to come, and for them to have their oil ready, you know, and their wicks trimmed and all these things that we talk about that are in the Bible. And so obedience being the catalyst for God to move, and obedience being the way that God can move easily throughout the earth. He can do whatever he wants. He can make a rock cry out if we don't. So not to say that our obedience is the only way that God can do anything, but God can definitely move a lot faster. If there are vessels that are fit for using. And so I just had that idea, that vision, and then I just kind of shared it with the group in terms of like, what is God calling you to be obedient in this season? Maybe you are being obedient in it, and that's awesome. Keep being obedient even when it gets difficult. But there are people, even in the kingdom, who feel like they want to do XYZ and God is calling you to do something else. And so even the verse about obedience being better than sacrifice, you know, I want to help out with the kids. I want to do this, and I'm going to give all my time to the children's ministry. But what if he's calling you to another ministry? What if he's asked you to step out and start your own ministry? Or what if he's called you to not do children's ministry, but to be on the prayer ministry or the prophetic ministry? Or I don't know. And that's like a church example, I guess. But that idea of like, I can do all the things that I want to do in my goodwill and good nature. But if it's not what God's asked me to do, it's still disobedience, even if it's a good thing, versus being a God thing. So I think what he's been teaching me is how to be obedient with what he has asked me to do. And if I don't know what he's asked me to do, seeking him to find out and asking him to prepare me or to place me where I'm supposed to be. Because I think in my mind, once you obey and you see God move, and he moves in power and authority, and it's like he just does so many amazing things that you could not have done on your own had you not been obedient. It kind of places this fire under you to like, I never want to be out of line. I never want to be out of order, because I've seen the power of God when I said yes to what he's asked me to do. And I've seen what happens when I'm doing something. I think I'm doing something for God, and it's not what he's asked me to do. And there's no power there. There's no authority there. It kind of falls on deaf ears or whatever the case may be. So I think that's what he's been teaching me, is like a very humbling thing. And I'll say this and then I'll turn over to you, but also the idea of like eternal perspective. That's something
you said
that was
eternal or internal? Yeah, eternal,
like forever, like the future, and having that eternal perspective is something that I was taught years ago when I was in college, and our youth pastor at the time he always talked about that, having that eternal perspective. When I see Jesus, when I meet Jesus, I'm going to be held accountable for the things that I obeyed and the things that I disobeyed.
Yeah.
And it's not this scary thing for the believer, but it's just, it says we store up treasures in heaven, and we'll have crowns that we receive that we eventually lay at his feet. So it's not just for us, but I want to have a lot of crowns to lay at his feet. I don't want to have one or two and then that's it, and I don't have anything else to lay at his feet. So, but we'll be accountable for it. And I watched this video a few days ago, and it just like, I had to take a moment of silence and just like reflect of like, wow. And the video was a short clip on Instagram. It was like a reel or a short style video. But it was a man who was at Judgment Day, and Jesus is calling out, God's calling out, and he's like, evangelist so-and-so, evangelist so-and-so. And the guy is like, doesn't know he's talking to him. And it's like, evangelist, like, evangelist. And he keeps calling him by this like title that this man clearly does not recognize, doesn't resonate with. And he's like, Lord, like I'm an accountant. Like I'm an accountant. I'm not an evangelist. And then he just further says, evangelist so-and-so, like, where are the 300, it's some specific number. It's like 300,000 souls that I asked you to reach in Asia. This like, what? And the guy's like clueless as to what this assignment was. Yeah, he's like, I'm just an accountant. I have my own firm. My whole life. Yeah, and he's talking about all these things. I have my own firm. Like I've done this and I've done that with my firm, and I'm just an accountant, and I've been successful at being an accountant. And God just keeps asking him. He doesn't even answer. He just keeps asking him, where are the X amount of souls in Asia I called you to reach? And the video kind of ends, not really with what happened to the guy. I don't know what happened to him, but it ends with just this idea of like, what has God called you to do? And it ends up having it said like, if you don't know, and he's like, if you would have sought me, I would have told you what your assignment is. If you would have spent time with me, if you would have been connected with me, if you would have truly been submitted to my leadership, and not just the idea of it, but like truly the leadership of me being not just your savior, but your Lord, and telling you what to do, and waiting at my feet for instructions and all this stuff, like you would have known what your actual assignment was. So anyways, that was really sobering. And that was really like, wow.
Yeah,
like,
that's intense.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Has there ever been a time in your life where you thought you were doing something completely right, and you spent time with the Lord and it was like something else? Like, I was just thinking about all those moments in my life.
Yeah, a lot. Nothing that specific, but yeah, like I remember, for example, when we were in high school and you and I were at my house and we had just graduated.
Right.
And we were sitting there thinking about college, and we both just like had a mental breakdown about, are we supposed to go to college? Are we not? Yeah. Like just a million things. And I think the big reason why I had no clue what I was supposed to do is because I was not tethered to God's heart. At least for me. Either. For me, I know I was not tethered to the heart of God at the time at all for what I was supposed to be doing in that season. And if I had have been, I wouldn't have gone. I know that, like now, 7 years later, 6 years later?
That's really crazy.
Yeah, 6, 7 years later, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would not have gone. And because it wasn't where I needed to be. And so what ended up happening, because God is a gracious God, I went, right? I go, and I'm miserable.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely miserable. I was in such a terrible season of depression.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say, no, I know I do not struggle with depression as like something that is a regular thing for me.
Yeah, it was out of the ordinary.
But I was in such a dark season emotionally, spiritually, mentally at that time. I was like, this is beyond just not being happy with, like, I have, in high school, you have to do an assignment, or you're in school and you have to do something, you just don't want to do it. It was beyond that. It was like torment. And I was just so miserable. And it took a lot of crying and a lot of yielding, but eventually, because God is gracious, I submitted and I said, I'm going home. I'm going home. This is not what God has for me right now. Is it a bad, and you mentioned earlier, good thing versus God thing. Is it a bad thing to go to college? Absolutely not. Right. Absolutely not. College is great when you're supposed to be there. Right. But if it's not for you, either in that time or at all, it's going to be a mess. And that's with anything. So no, that's one example I can give. I can give a lot of examples, but that's a specific example. And I left, and my life took a very interesting path after that to get me kind of to where I'm at now. And even a couple months ago, I mean, how pregnant am I now? I'm pushing 7 months pregnant. So when we first moved here, I wasn't pregnant. When we relocated for Matthew to go to medical school, Matthew's my husband, for those who don't know. But when we first
Jesus is mine.
That was funny. When we first relocated for him to start medical school, I had this idea. Well, no, it wasn't an idea. I knew that the season of my life was changing. Not only because I'm moving, but I could feel, and we actually talked about it when we got together, I could feel that things were changing spiritually. The landscape of my spiritual life was changing, right? And in that landscape of my spiritual life changing, my natural environment was also switching up too.
Right.
So it was a physical manifestation of what was happening internally.
Wow.
And so I thought it had to do with me probably going back to college, because it's been 5-6 years. I was under the impression I was going to go back to college when I moved here, probably around this time. Actually, I was thinking, January semester, I would go back. And kind of get my career in the way that the world identifies what a career is, right? I thought that was what was happening, and that was the season. I got pregnant. So I was off.
Life is crazy.
I was so off. I was so off. So now I'm like, okay, was I tethered to the heart of God?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't. Yeah. And I'm not saying that to say that like you're not going to get it wrong even when you are close to the Lord, but I think you won't be as shocked and disappointed. Because I think for me, both times I had to wrestle with the reality of what God had for me instead of what I thought I wanted or what I thought he was going to give me. If that makes any sense. And I had to wrestle with that. And it's like, if I'm tethered to his heart, I won't have to wrestle with the things he gives me, the things he sets before me, because I'll be so in tune with him that I'll want them.
Right.
You know?
That's where that verse about our desires aligning with his.
Right.
And us being hidden behind Christ and the things that he desires, we start to desire. And so I guess like practically like spending time with God. That's literally it. Like, I think we can have all these like ethereal conversations about it, but it really is take time out of your day, 20, 30 minutes, and talk to Jesus about the things that are maybe coming up in your mind right now, like coming up in my mind right now, things about your job or your friendships or your relationships or your family, and things that you feel you should be doing and you're not doing. And I think like it can cause anxiety sometimes to think, okay, what do I need to do? 100%. What's my purpose? What's my calling? What do I need to be obedient in? If I'm not obedient in it, I'm going to stand before him and he's going to be calling me evangelist. And I thought I was a prophet. And, and it's like really just spending time with the Lord. And what I do is I just spend time with the Lord. And if I bring before him the thing that I need help deciding if I should do or not do, or what path I should take. And if I don't hear clear instructions, Sydney, I want you to do this, which God is really kind, and he will, if you keep asking, he'll let you know. It might not be in your one-on-one time with him. It might be through your interactions with friends or things that your friends, kind of call out in you, like, oh, I think you're really great at this, by the way. And it's like, oh, that kind of confirms what I was wanting to do and all that stuff. But if I don't get a clear answer, I just go where the peace is. Because like that verse says, like, when we keep his commandments are not burdensome. So the things that he wants us to do are not burdensome. And so it shouldn't be this weighed down, heavy thing, but really just following the peace that God gives you. And sometimes that peace does surpass understanding, and it doesn't make sense what you feel peace about, but it is what you're supposed to be obedient in. And so even with you going to deciding if you want to go to college or not, and going and then deciding not to go in that season, it's like that obedience probably didn't grasp, a lot of people might not have grasped that understanding of it, but for you and for those that are close enough to you to trust, what the Lord is telling you, that peace surpassed understanding at the time. And now looking back, you're in a whole different place in life. You're about to be a mom. Like, who would have thought, So it's just like your obedience is, you don't know what it's being tethered to God is, you and God being tethered together and having that connection. That obedience is also tethered to someone else. It's tethered to, in this case, you never know, like who knows if you would have been pregnant right now and your obedience being tethered to your daughter and even me moving to Dallas, that was a huge move in my life.
Right.
And because of that obedience, I've been so grateful to see what my obedience was tethered to and who it was tethered to and the things that the Lord has been teaching me that now I can help other people in, and I can receive from someone else being tethered to God and their obedience. And I've received, finding community, things like that from other people being tethered to God and being obedient to what he's called them to do. It's like, you never know what your obedience is unto. Yeah, it's just, you never know. You never know.
It's unto the Lord, because the scripture says that. So it's unto the Lord. But like you were talking about, that open vision you had it paints such a beautiful picture. It paints a intense, like, when you're at a position, it doesn't just affect you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that that's the thing that is so contrary to Western culture right now is like, it's me. Like, if I obey God, he'll give me this and he'll do this for me, and me. Like, no, like, you being obedient to God, yes, it's going to bless you, but it's going to bless a lot of other people too.
Right.
And it's important that you do what you've been called to do so other people can receive the benefit of your obedience and are pointed to Christ as a result of that thing. So to kind of close my thoughts on this, I want to talk about my husband real quick. So I was actually talking to my mom about this earlier, about not a different topic. It's very similar, but different nuance to it. And I was saying how you read things about like, what are the top 10 most important decisions in life? And a lot of people, like on TikTok, there's like a lot of self-help and all this kind of stuff, or not TikTok, because I don't have TikTok. Like but Instagram, a lot of like reels, Instagram stuff. Yeah. People are talking about like, what are some of the most important decisions you make in your life? And almost all of these videos that I come across, they're like, your partner, the person you choose to spend your life with, is one of the most, if not the most, now this is from a worldly perspective, right? It might be the most important decision you ever make.
Of course. Because
that person is going to be with you all the time. They're going to benefit or struggle with you throughout life. And then you're going to benefit or struggle throughout life with them, because of them, for them, and with them, and vice versa. And so it started to make me think. And I'm not going to say that that's just a worldly perspective, because I don't think that it's the first important decision. I think the first important decision is whether or not you're going to be submitted to the Lord and be a believer and, have him forgive you for your sins. But it's a close second.
Yeah, for sure.
Because in my own life, I heard someone say you reap the benefit of the relationship that the people closest to you have with the Lord. I don't know if that sounds, did that make sense?
Yeah. So the relationship that everyone else has with the Lord, you're reaping the benefit of.
You reap the benefits of that because you're tethered to them, like you were talking about being tethered, right? So, for example, with Matthew, we joke about this all the time, and this is not, and I'm not trying to like gas him up or anything, but we joke about how if you hang out with him, you're gonna get something for free from somebody. Wow. You're gonna get something for free. Somebody's gonna bless you. Somebody's gonna come up and say something nice to you. Like, it doesn't matter.
Wow.
It's crazy. It is so weird. Like, we'll be out and I won't get free nothing. I be out by myself. I gotta pay for everything I buy. Like, no. I got with Matthew one time and the person in front of us pays for all of our food.
Wow.
I'm like, or like I go out by myself day after day after day after day after day. I go out with Matthew and they're like, hey, we made extra food. Do y'all want it?
Wow.
Or, you know, hey, like, we're a little slow right now, so we're just going to cover we're going to cover the whole bill, or just things like that, like happen regularly. Or like people will come up and be like, just say really nice things to him for no reason. And it's at first it would be kind of annoying, but then I started to benefit. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And now that I live with him and I interact with him, I know, and because of my relationship with the Lord and his relationship with the Lord, I know it is not just because he's lucky. Because people, like, we have some people who are friends that are out here who will be like, oh, you're just lucky. You're just lucky. And it's like, no, he's not lucky. That boy, that man is so obedient to the purpose that God put on his heart to become a physician. He is not doing anything in his life contrary to what will help him fulfill that purpose. Right. And because of that, the Lord is blessing him. Wow. And as a result, me and this baby are going to be blessed because he is so tethered to the purpose and this specific purpose and plan that God had put on his heart years ago. And that, like, when you have friends, and it doesn't have to just be your spouse, but when you have friends, when you have family, when you have leadership, church leadership at your job, because, you know, the idea is that, you know, believers are going to occupy all spaces, right? So you have leadership at your job, at the nonprofit you volunteer at your church, in your home, your name, everything. You are going to reap the benefits of obedience because you are tethered to them. That's good. And I am a testament that that's true. 100% that's true. His simple obedience to come home and instead of play video games, he studies. Or his simple, and then as a result of that, we get Chick-fil-A for free. Like, sure. If you guys get nothing out of this, your obedience will get you more than you give. Yeah, it 100% will. It is a kingdom principle. Multiplication is a kingdom principle. Like, God, you never go to God with 1 and 1 and he gives you 2. You go to God with 1 and 1 and he gives you 1,000. Yeah. You know, like, he doesn't multiplicate. Like, I was reading, what is it? I think it's, and I'll end my thought with this. I think it's Mark chapter, where is it? Okay, yeah. So it's Mark chapter 10, verse 29. Oh God, I can't see. Mark chapter 10, verses 29 and 30. It says, and Jesus is talking to the disciples about, this is right after the rich man, the parable, or not the parable, but the story about the rich man when he comes and he's like, God, I've done all this stuff. Like, how do I get into the kingdom of heaven? And he's like, you've done all the laws and you followed all the commandments, but I need you to do one more thing. I need you to give up the idol of your wealth. And the rich man walks away and he's like, I can't do it. Sacrifice, and so then, versus obedience. Right. He was obeying all the laws, but his heart, it was a heart thing. And he said, you need to give up this idol in your life. And this idol is your money. You need to sell all your stuff. That's how you're going to get in the kingdom of heaven. And then, you know, Jesus is talking about how it's very difficult for people who are extremely monetarily wealthy to get into the kingdom because it's an idol. The love of money, you know, the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. It is a serious idol. And American culture. Anyway, so they're asking all these questions and he goes, yes. Jesus replied, I assure you that everyone who has given up a house or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or property for my sake and for the gospel will receive now in return 100 times as many houses, brothers, sisters, mothers, children, and property along with persecution. So it's the principle of you give up one thing, I give you way more than what you had. Yeah. And is true, is real. Even in the practical, simple things like getting your Starbucks free, you know? And I'm not saying that if you do this, you're going to start getting free stuff. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm just trying to
it's not the goal of obedience. But,
right. Yeah. It's not the goal of obedience to get free stuff, but there's a promise tied to it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
That's awesome. Well, guys, thank you guys so much for listening. As you were talking, I just get the image that we've probably all seen, but it's the image with a little girl who has a little tiny teddy bear and she's scared to give it to God. And God has this huge teddy bear behind his back. And it's just a matter of, like you said, your obedience is tied to something. Your obedience is tied to someone, some promise, some blessing, peace of mind. And there's just so much fruit that's attached to it. So get with God, find out the things that you need to be focused on in the season and do those things. It's a simple Nike, just do it. And let us know, areas that obedience has been fruitful. Let us know areas that you want to grow in obedience in that area. But we'll get you guys in the next podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said, you can look at the show notes and see all of our information, visit our website, support what we support, basically everything that we do. We donate 10% to the organizations that you can find on our website. And that's the heart behind it, is to send that light where it's needed most. And so that's how we do it, guys. And so, thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your day or evening. Bye.